It doesn't matter if it's the size of a nail or a doorknob or a bowling ball. Today I'm going to show you how to fix drywall holes of any size and make it look like it never happened. All right, well let's start with a hole. First of all, right here. Okay, now we're going to start small. This is just a small hole, and then we'll graduate to bigger issues. All right guys, so this is what I call my drywall homeowner repair kit. You're going to have a bag of 45-minute hot mud compound. 45 number on there basically means that you're going to mix this mud up. It gets hard faster than it dries, and that's what's called hot mud. It doesn't shrink as much as regular all-purpose drywall compound. It's also a little bit harder to sand. So as the first coat, which is what we call the tape coat, or the repairs, I love to use a hot mud, okay? It speeds up your whole day, allows you to get 2 coats in one day, and it makes the patch incredibly strong. So we're going to start off with 2 handfuls of the compound here. And the reason for that is, when you're making a drywall sandwich, you're going to push a lot of that mud in through the hole into the backside. All right, so just create a volcano. And that will work really well for us here. And we'll add the water. Now, if you want to speed up the drying time, you can also add salt into this mix. And all we do is we just basically top dress this. It helps to accelerate the whole soaking up of the water process. Top dressing this, we're going to make this water just a little bit thicker so it doesn't make quite as much of a mess. And you know, there's guys out there, they like to use their little pans for whatever reason, and that works well. Or you can use a mixing bowl and grab the kitchen beater. And you can make it that way. Whatever you do, doesn't really matter. The idea is to get a nice thick runny consistency, and then you just fold it in, okay? We've got control here and it's not running all over the place. That's the point. Now, we're going to be using this 4-inch knife just to work all that in and to break down any dry chunks that are in it. Right. So there's a chunk right there that needs to be worked in. And so we're just going to use the corner of the knife to smash and mash, okay? Make it nice and creamy. You can try it out. Just drag it across your hock and see. That is pretty darn nice. Okay, we'll collect it now in the middle, and then we are ready to repair a hole. Now, when you have a small hole, just want to tear off a piece of tape, about a foot, would be perfect. And you want to take a look at the damage. And basically what we're looking to do here is we want to cut the surface of this into somewhat of a square or a rectangle that better represents the size of the tape. Okay? To the point where the tape will fit in the hole. Now we're perfect. Okay. So we're going to take our hot mud and we're going to fill it from all 4 sides until this hole is completely filled up. Okay? Pushing it all the way through to the back. Remember, when you break drywall, it blows up on the backside, but there's always chunks and paper still sitting there. And by forcing all the mud in here, you can incorporate that into part of your assembly and add extra strength. Okay, I'll do this like this, like this. Okay? Then we're ready to go now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set our paper on the edge, and then we're going to push it into the hole about 1/2 inch deep, which is the thickness of the drywall. Okay, and then we're going to just tear that off. All right, here we go. Press it on nice and tight. There we go. Now we get that nice gap. Okay, now we're going to fill that void with the hot mud, which doesn't like to shrink very much. Okay, beautiful. And then we'll take our tape and we're going to cover this again here, and then just a little bit of an overlap. Bam. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna just kind of flatten it out, get rid of any bumps and humps, okay? Remember, whenever you're doing drywall repair, less is more. We wanna try to minimize how thick this is gonna get. So pressing all that in nice and tight will keep this from being a big bump that we're gonna have to stretch out later. Now that's what we call the tape coat, but because it's a sandwich, it's also the fill coat. So now all we need to finish this patch off is wait for that to harden, and then we'll put another coat over top so we have one great big white circle. And then we can give it a light sand and give it a finish coat, and then it's ready to paint. Okay, that one's done for this point. So the next kind of damage we're gonna deal with is like a medium-sized hole. That's the kind of hole that you get when you have teenagers, when they're just young and dumb. So in my experience, when you get damage on the face of a drywall, we're not just trying to repair the visible issue here, okay? What we're gonna try to do is replace all of the damaged drywall, which is usually twice as much damage as what you actually see. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start out here. We're gonna use our saw. Now before you go sticking a saw on a wall, all right, feel free to take a look at the damage here. Reach in behind, check for wires, water lines, that sort of stuff. Make sure there's nothing in there to get cut. Oh, there we go. We're gonna check this, pull it out, and make sure that all the damage is visible. If it continues on, then keep on cutting. The key to this patch is making sure that it's solid drywall on all four sides. All right, at this point, you wanna find yourself a piece of drywall that is not finished on the tapered side. Okay, we're gonna cut that off. That way we're filling this apples to apples, and I'm gonna have my face paper on the drywall the same thickness as the existing wall. We're gonna cut it a little longer than it needs to be. It looks good there. No measuring tape, no pencil, no ruler. Just eyeball this bad boy. And if you don't have drywall just laying around, you can always pop by your local building store. They sell these 2-foot by 2-foot panels that fit in the back seat of your car or your trunk, no problem. And you can take that home, and whatever you don't use, you can store off your concrete in your basement somewhere dry, and that can become part of your drywall repair kit. Now that we got this, I'm just gonna flip it around, okay? And the reason we wanted to make it somewhat of a rectangle is because we're going to be eyeballing just a little bit on the inside of this damage. And we're gonna score the paper. All right, same for the top and the bottom. A good way to do it is put your knife here and then roll it over. So now you got your mark. All right. And now we can cut through. Okay. Now the magic here is this. When you're replacing drywall and you add a piece the same thickness as this, if you then take tape from your drywall repair kit, it's a thicker tape than the drywall itself. So we just peel the drywall off of the face, because this paper is a much thinner version of the drywall tape. Now this is only good in low impact areas, okay? Again, this is a low impact area. What the heck happened? What were my kids doing in the living room kind of damage, right? Now, when you tear it off, you're gonna find that it might have little bumps. That's okay, that's why we gave you a little bit of mercy. Check to make sure that it fits in the hole. And then with a pencil, just mark your arrow up, okay? Because you don't wanna fill this all up full of mud and come back, grab the patch, put it upside down, and it doesn't fit. All right, it'll drive you crazy, and then you'll break something. You're right back to square one. Now the key is we're going to squeeze this out onto the side of the existing drywall, so that when we place the new piece in, we're trapping this hot mud in the gap between the old and the new. trying our best to create an environment here where we're gonna have great contact. Now, the rest of this, we're just gonna put a thin layer along the sides so that the tape on that patch has something to set into. Okay, there we are. Make sure everything has got mud on it. You don't want any voids, or that'll create a bubble later on. Now we take our patch, arrow up. We just wiggle it in there. Now, we don't want to push because there is nothing in behind to stop it from falling through the other side. So, you take a look at your corner here, where your paper is. You can just fold it over if you want, but then you want to put your knife across that corner and then set it against the existing wall. And that's all you want to do, okay? And then, once you've got it set, pull your corners out. Good pressure here. That should set the panel in position now. Now we're going to use a 45-degree angle on the new drywall and snowplow any excess mud out of the way. Okay. Nice and simple. Now, if you follow this direction and you're using hot mud and you just do it once, you're going to be fine. But if you're trying to work it and work it and work it because you put too much mud on, you're going to find that that little thin piece of paper soaks up so much moisture, it starts to wrinkle. Then you're going to get yourself in all kinds of a mess. So the secret here is less is more. Just get a little bit of mud, thin it all out, and let this dry completely before we add another coat. If I start going like this and adding more mud, trying to fan it out, okay, I run the risk of putting too much moisture on that paper, and then we're in a whole world of hurt. So resist that temptation. That's for about 45 minutes to an hour from now. When that hot mud is dried up, then we can apply our second coat. Okay, so now let's talk about what do I do when I got a larger hole? Because if you have larger holes, generally that's like a renovation process or an inspection or thing, but they want to cut in a hole to have a look. 2 passes and I'm through the wall. I'm only going 3/4 of an inch in, so it's a safe way to make a hole. Okay, so when I'm doing an inspection hole, generally I'm doing that because I don't know what's behind it. But for the sake of getting this done, I'm going to just use my Sawzall because I built this just so I can make this damage and show you, and I know there's no mechanical in here. All right, now we got a nice big hole. We can't do a California patch here, right? It's just too big of a space. So we have a couple of different options, and you've all seen this. You can get plywood and you can screw it on. You can get backers or shims or some old baseboard or whatever have you. But I got a better trick that's going to be part of your drywall repair kit that you can keep handy so you can fix a hole anytime you want. Watch this. This is for large holes. This is also for small holes if you'd like, right? Just to have a little bit more girth in the way that that reacts. These are drywall repair clips. Now, they work like this. Basically what's going on is you have this bunch of little holes that the screw will find and then thread onto. So you just clip onto the drywall anywhere you want, and then you add a screw and it creates a strong backer. Okay, and you can put as many on these on here as you want. But the secret to this system is having a perfectly cut hole. So how we do that is this way. So we're going to take our sheet. This is our drywall panel. We're going to start with the good. All right, here we are. And we're going to basically trace out this panel and create something square that is bigger than the hole, but just by a touch. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep that one line there, and now I'm just going to trace with my knife, and that's my new hole that I'm going to cut. It is a lot easier to cut the hole to fit your drywall patch than to cut your patch to fit the hole. This is much more exact. Now we can add our clips. All right. So here we are. We're in a situation where I've got my stud that's interrupting with this getting in there. If you can force it in behind the screw, that's great. But if not, we're just going to measure this off. I am about 1/2 inch too much. So I'm just going to customize it with my snips. And I still have lots of holes there for my screw to grab. Okay, and then I'll take one more up here. All right. The patch comes with screws. I like to use my own. And we're just going to dimple it so that it's just below the surface of the paper, but not torn through. And that becomes the strength of this whole program. Okay, so you'll notice that first I went in, the tip of the screw actually caught the surface of the mesh. So I just backed it and changed my angle a little bit and found a hole. Now the nature of these clips, they add a little bit of thickness to the hole. So if your panel is just a touch too stiff, yeah, I am just a little bit too stiff here. So instead of cutting the drywall, we can just shave it down with this. That is perfect every time. Now we can screw on the other side. Now, obviously, just taking a look at that, you know that the tabs are in the way, but they're designed to be breakaway. So, once we got all of our screws set, take a pair of pliers and it breaks off at the weak spot behind the drywall. All right, and this only takes a minute. Okay, there we go. Now, time to make some hot mud. Nice and easy. So we're just going to take it off the side of the knife. Okay. I'm going to recommend when you have tall verticals like this, work from the top down, forcing the mud into that gap. If you go the other way, it's just going to squish out all over the place and land all over the floor. All right. Here we go. Force it in. Okay. And then go with a nice wide, gentle pressure. Get some of the extra mud out. Okay. Nice and wide. Force it in the gap. Nice and wide. All right. Now, take enough tape for the whole patch here. Start with something sharp. The crease goes right where the gap is. Okay? Now, start from metal. Go up the one side, down the other. That's how you cut the tape. Okay? Now, we're going to set the paper in the mud here. And then we're going to put mud over top of the tape again where we're going to get an overlap joint. All right, there's our hole. There it is. Bam. Same thing. Okay? To help your feathering, you want the tape to overlap, but you don't want it to go all the way to the edge. Here we go. Now obviously, this type of a repair is going to require a third coat of mud because we're building all of this on the surface. We're overlapping all of our joints. And basically building up a whole ridge around the outside, like a picture frame. Okay, here we are. And and then down, and then knife it. Now, we are trying our best to get rid of all the extra mud that's in behind that tape that we don't need. But you can't put so much pressure that you remove all of the mud, okay? But there's nothing left to bond the paper and the old surface together. Now, because this is the highest part of the wall here, I'm going to recommend you take a little bit of the mud and you just apply it to the inside here and build out that ridge as a part of your first coat. Do the same thing on the side. Not over top of the tape. We're not trying to make that tape soaking wet. Just want to, like a pre-fill for getting ready to stretch this out. A little bit more. Now the secret of working with a knife is having the right kind of pressure. So I'm going to put gentle pressure on the middle to clean. Okay? And then I'm going to put a lot of pressure on the outside to clean and feather it. Okay? And then you got to find that right amount of pressure while you're pressing on the outside, add to the middle to get rid of the excess material. And that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice. Okay, so there we go. We don't have hardly any sanding here, and that is a huge patch. If you can get that kind of a result after the first coat, then you are well on your way to being very successful. So here we are, paper, hot mud paper. This is ready now for the next coat. Okay, it's been about 2 hours. My California patch, it's also solid, ready for the next coat. This patch, solid, ready for the next coat, okay? The difference is this one was applied really nice and thin, and this one has got some ridges because we did some buildup. So the way we deal with ridges now, simply take your knife, carve them back. Because although it's hard, it's still got some moisture, and it's really easy to shape it now, okay? So we're just taking off the high points, and that's it. This patch is going to require this different tool. This is new. This is a Marshalltown 4, I think it's a 4x12. Okay, it's very straight. Okay, it doesn't have a warp or anything in it. It's a very straight trowel. And the idea here is that we can do a pass, one coat, and then cover up that with the hot mud. So when it's low, you can leave it all on the wall. So in this kind of situation, it's best to go in 2 different directions. Yeah, there we go. And if need be, you can even do a bit of a circular motion here to get the proper fill. And then come across with gentle pressure just to pick up the ridges. All right. Now, with a California patch, same thing. I'm just going to use the hot mud, and now I'm going to get rid of this ridge off the edge of the paper. So this is my second coat. There we are. Okay. So now the ridge of the paper to the drywall disappears. That's our goal on this coat, is just to make that smooth. Nothing else. We just want to make sure that that ridge is gone. Okay? And if you see these air bubbles, just knock it down. It's not uncommon to get air bubbles over existing paintwork. All right, so don't worry about it right now. It'll all settle down and then it'll sand out just fine. Now with this one, we are in need of a whole lot more mud, because what we want to do now is with this trowel is we want to fill the entire thing and then fill through the middle. So got to make another big batch. Now remember, this added thickness to the wall. We filled the middle, so it's the same. Now we're going to double check. You see? Because like that creates a gap on your end. Okay? And so there's my gap. I'm still a little bit proud here, but here, that's nice and flush. There is no difference. So I'm built out the same from here to here now. So what I want to do is I basically want to do a fill coat. Remember, we had tape coat. This is a fill coat. And we're going to be going here and then up this side as well. And then what we're doing is we're using pressure on the right-hand side because we don't want that tape to get any thicker. And we're going to basically fill from here to there, stretch that thickness out so that it becomes invisible. Okay? And then we're going to want to do the same thing from here, going up across the top. All right, there we go. So that's the idea. And then we have, of course, our California patch, which we already did a second coat on. And it's already hard. But here's the deal. When we're going to go to finish with the all-purpose compound, hard isn't good enough. You want it dry, or it'll bubble, okay? So we're going to let all this sit overnight now. We'll come back and we'll do all the third coats tomorrow. Because this is the finish, let's go back to this hole. It's a little imperfect, okay? You just want to stretch it out and then work it back and forth until all the bumps are worked out of it. So you're left with nothing but creamy mud. Okay, now, pressure on the outside always when you're doing a circle, okay, or the heel if it's on the other side of the circle. Okay, and then gentle pressure right over the middle, get rid of all those extra ridges. That's what we're going to sand. We're going to call that perfect, all right? Now, the next hole was our medium. This was the California patch. And this is where the trim was, okay? So we're not going to concern ourselves too much with that. We are going to just go with 2 vertical passes with our finish mud and just stretch it out an extra inch or 2 on each side. Remember, we didn't have much of a bump here, okay? So there's not much to stretch out. Like when I pull nice and tight, I can still see the patch behind me. There's almost no imperfection here at all. Okay, so I hardly need anything. Now, this area here, this dark line, that's the edge of the drywall where the paper is. And if you don't have enough mud over top of that, when you go to sand, and when you sand, you're changing the texture of the mud so it looks more like a wall. If you don't have enough there, you're going to sand and expose the paper. So we're going to go back and put a little bit of mud there and then leave it there so that we can sand it perfect. Okay, there we are. That one's perfect for sanding. And then here's the big hole. Now, see all these bubbles? These are on the surface mostly, and they leave little pit marks behind. It's because we're doing a lot of mud work over paint. Remember I talked about this? You just want to rub the heads of those off so you can expose the little pit mark underneath. Okay, here we go. All right. That's all you need. You don't need to pull out a sanding block. You don't need to get a sanding power tool. Just the edge of your knife. Rub over any of these ridges. That is good as gold. Good as gold. Now, for this, because we're going to do this joint as well, and we're going to go horizontal, we'll go from right to left across the whole patch. And again, this mud needs to be worked out. I'll do a few passes and smooth and cream it up. And it can be a lot of work just to get your mud creamy enough to make it workable. Okay, and less is more. If you see bumps and holes, you probably have too much mud on. I gotta get some of my good stuff here now. Now this is my finishing mud that's already been mixed, sitting in the pail that's perfect. I'm gonna finish that patch with this stuff. You'll see the difference. On a big patch for the third coat, we'll start across the middle with a good amount of pressure. All right? And then we'll come down here with more pressure on the bottom than the top. A little bit of a snowplow, working our way out. And then we'll come back up here, working our way up. Pressure on the top. Angled out. With the whole goal of trying to create something that's relatively smooth and flat, and then we're going to have to trust the sanding process to finish this off. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. I hope you found that useful. We're doing a whole series on drywall repair, so if you find that you don't have an answer to your question, consider joining us on Discord. For $5 a month, you can send me pictures or video, and I can consult with you on your particular project. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.